A super teacher masters teaching techniques. When we did this workshop before, we did this extensively. Today we won't, because we'll be visiting it later on when we reach physical classroom management. Super teachers know that one size does not fit all. And this is essential for being a good teacher. I cannot explain one lesson in one way and expect all students to understand. It's impossible. Even if you have just 2 students in class, okay? So, you have to know that one size does not fit all. There is no single teaching technique that will work with every child or concept. And please remember here that we have 2 things, child or concept. So, the problem of one teaching technique is that it doesn't work with every child, because every 2 children are different. And it doesn't work with every concept. Okay, I can't teach different concepts the same way. I need to have a different method for every concept. Therefore, super teachers should have a repertoire of strategies that can, in a way, be used to make the most effective lesson. I should be able to include in my strategy, in my lesson, many different strategies to address each and every child. And as we discussed last time, this should also in a way be individualized. The more I know my students, the more I know that I should cover something in many different ways to address each of the students. As I said before, I have a paper like this, okay, with all the names of my students. And then next to each one, as the year goes by, it shouldn't be the year, as the first couple of weeks go by, I jot down notes, okay, where I know that this teacher learns best when seeing. This teacher learns best when doing. This student learns best when singing. This student learns best when being by himself at home. And then, when I put my lesson and I put my homework, I take the paper and I make sure that I have covered each and every student in my class list, so that I don't forget some students down. A super teacher learns each child's learning style. A super teacher learns, okay? And please stress on the word learns. It is different from knows, okay? It's not about knowing, it's about learning. What is the difference? Learning, first of all, gives you a sense that you're making more effort, okay? You're not just knowing something. And you are actually learning it very well, okay? You're going to know by heart. You need to make an effort to learn each child's learning style. And what is a learning style? Excuse me? Yes? Very good. So it's the way the students learn. And basically, there are many types of learning styles, but we basically have 3, okay? Visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, which basically means to see, to hear, to do. Some students learn best when they see, some students learn best when they hear, and some students learn best when they do. And most students learn best combination of 3, okay? So I need to be able to know that I need to use the 3 different methods during my class. But I also need to know how each child learns in order to add something extra to this. Now, how can we know or learn, a child's learning style? First of all, we can use something called learning style quizzes, and we have one today that we're going to do today in a couple of minutes. A learning style quiz is a quiz, a questionnaire, a multiple choice test that you give your students to basically learn what types of learners they are. Okay? And it's usually fun. And you should incorporate things like this in your lessons. Okay? Short quizzes, questionnaires, trivia, okay, IQ tests. Most students, all ages, enjoy this. Stories.
There's a book in our school at home based on this, the learning styles. And I think I took from each learning style a couple of sheets, and I give the students in the beginning of that week, in the beginning of the school year, they should go to each. And we did it like activities or something. And like this, you can really understand what each one. It's the drawing, it's what the tracks that will, some musical, writing, and stuff like this.
Excellent. So this is something you should always do. You can do it at the beginning of the year, and then you can do it again during the week. Remember when we talked about never having free time and always over planning? You don't have to over plan something that has to do with biology, okay? Or something that has to do with math. You could over plan something that has to do with a learning style quiz or an IQ test or a trivia questionnaire or something, okay? It is not impossible. You can do this and be able to incorporate this in your lessons. Using learning style quizzes. Observing students. Observing students. For example, first day of school. I asked all my students to open their notebooks, their copybooks, and to write the 5 most important things that they think they should bring with them to school. Okay? Now, some of them are going to write. Some of them are going to draw. Some of them may sit blank in front of the paper, and when you go and ask them, why is your paper blank? They tell you the 5 things, but they don't want to write. What do you learn? You learn that the person who wants to tell you without writing is not a visual learner. You know that the person who's drawing the things instead of writing them down is definitely a visual learner. You know that someone who says the most important things to bring to school are a soccer ball, football for example, skateboard, okay, food, okay. You learn from what their preferences are, what types of people they are, okay. Number 3, recording your observations, and this is very important. A lot of times we feel brilliant because we have observed something or understood something about a student. But then we go to another lesson and another lesson, and by the end of the day we forget. Record it. Always write down everything that you think is noteworthy, write it down. Exactly, even the questions they ask. Excellent. If there's a question that you were interested in, somebody asked a question and you just realized, how did he ask this question? There's something strange about this person. Exactly. Write it down. Okay? And then, later on when you're planning your lessons, all this is going to be very useful. Consulting with other teachers. And here again comes the word cooperation. The same student, okay, is not only in your math class. The same student learns biology and chemistry and English and French and Arabic. Consult with other teachers. How are they doing in your lessons? Okay? How many of you teaching English, for example, know which students in their classrooms love the music lesson and have a very nice voice and love to sing? Very few of us know what the music teacher says about these kids. But if you know that a certain student in your classroom is brilliant in singing, for example, then you should be able to use this information during the classroom. Deliberately, okay? Deliberately. But without telling the student, I've spoken with your music teacher, and I know that you like singing, so let's sing this. No. Put it into the lesson. And don't look at the student. Say it in general. And then glance at the student and you see that they are very, very interested, because you have just said something that interests him or her. Okay? How? By the information that you have gained by consulting with other teachers. Okay? And also add to this, it's going to be in the next slide, consulting with parents. Okay? Speak with parents and learn about their child, and don't just nod when they give you information, write it down. Okay? And then, during your lesson, make sure you use these little tips that you got, and the students will love them. Okay? For example, I know that a certain student in my class, I teach English, a certain student in my class is brilliant in math. Excellent. Okay? I do something that has to do with math. For example, I ask them, okay, so you have 40 questions right and 17 wrong. And every 4 take away 1. So what is 17 divided by 4? And then I point to the student that I know is brilliant in math. Okay? And then he just right away says the answer. What 17 divided by 4 is. And he's happy because he was able to answer a question. Students look at him. You say, okay, excellent. You clap, whatever. You are cueing here something, kind of relationship between you and the kids. Using little tips that you have learned from parents or from other teachers or from your own observations. Okay? I realize, for example, that most students in my class have pencil cases with the picture of Hannah Montana, whom I read here. Ben 10, okay?
City bands, most of that.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Now when you go to school next week, if you go to school, flags. Okay. So realizing some subtle tips like this throughout your classroom helps you to address these students in ways that they feel interested in. For example, all the students in your second grade class have pencil cases with all the girls with animals on it. And only one girl has a pencil case with a picture of Snow White on it, and a bag with a picture of Snow White as well. So you know that this one student loves Snow White. Okay? Now, don't you think that this one student who loves Snow White feels bad that all of the other kids in the classroom love Hannah Montana? What? Maybe they do. Why don't you, during your lesson, say something like, and this reminds me of Snow White. I used to love Snow White when I was your age. Okay? And then just go along. She's gonna adore you. You're the best teacher. Why? Because you love Snow White just like she does. You don't need to say it deliberately, but you need to mean it. See? It is, and this is what a teacher is. A teacher is a noble person. Yes.
I find that when you relate to things that the students like, then they respect you. Like if you can say something positive about Snow White and Hannah Montana, like maybe make some sort of connection. Even a simple thing that, although they're both girls, the kids will remember that. They're like, oh yeah, this teacher knows about Hannah Montana. Like even if you mention a song about Hannah Montana, for example.
Exactly.
Even the boys here, for some strange reason, they like the Jonas Brothers. And they
So
even in the United States, because in the United States, if a boy came to school with a pencil case of the Jonas Brothers on it, he'd be labeled.
Okay, so
But it's funny here. For me, it's funny.
so basically, what Mr. Chen is saying here is that you can actually use this to benefit yourself as a teacher and have the whole class respect you in a way by addressing all their interests. This is perfectly correct. My point here was a continuation to this, and it's for the students that you find hard to reach. There are some students who you may find very hard to reach. Students who don't want to speak at all. Students who don't ask questions, don't answer your questions. They leave right away. They come in quietly. You try to speak with them. They resent you. This kind of student should be dealt with in this way. From very far away. Observe. Okay? Ask questions and learn about him or her from parents and other teachers without him knowing anything about it. And then include this little hidden note every now and then in your lesson that you know he or she will appreciate, therefore building a relationship between you and the hard-to-reach student. So you can do it with the whole classroom, or you can pinpoint certain students whom you're having trouble dealing with. Okay? Just like the Snow White example that I gave a little while ago.